Hey, welcome everybody. This is John Paul Mendoza with It's a Paul World. We're at Freedom Fest 2021. We're talking to very interesting people, and we have a very special guest. In fact, I wanted to talk to her before, but we couldn't get her. Just schedule wouldn't allow, but she has been gracious enough to talk to us right now. So we have Lee Schoolland, and she has a fascinating story that I think all of you will want to hear. Lee, welcome.
Thank you, John Paul. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about how your travels. How did it all start, and then how did you end up here in the good old US of A, and how all that?
Yeah, I am made in China. So I lived in China for 26 years. And my life in China, that 26 years was the worst time in modern Chinese history, from the late 1950s to early 1980s. And I survived the famine, the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution. And so I have a first-hand story of the evil of communism and dictatorship.
So what made you decide, after living through those three major events, that it was time to leave and you had to find a way to get out? And how did you make that decision? Then how did you get out?
Oh, actually, decision was not difficult because nobody enjoys suffering, and there's absolutely no freedom in our lives. And we had no freedom to decide what to eat, what to wear, where to live, who to marry, what kind of job to have. Everything was dictated by the government. So leaving is easy part. But China had been closed since late 1950, early 1960. China closed its border, and no Chinese were allowed to leave, and no foreigners were allowed to come into China.
Right.
So we didn't have choices. But in 1980s, China opened up. So we have opportunity. So I came to the United States as a graduate student in 1986, and I just stayed.
So when you think back about living in China and just what happened with the communists and how they were trying to run everybody's life, how would you contrast that when you got here to the United States?
Oh, it's very, very different. In China, because there's no rule of law, so everybody actually could do a lot of things without restriction, right? Even though we didn't have freedom, but because we're communist, so there's no property rights. The mountains, all the trees belong to everybody, belong to nobody. So we didn't have means of heating or cooking, so we just go to the mountains and cut the trees. And find the trees I like, and I cut it. I can bring the tree home to make furniture. I can bring the branches and make fuels for fire, for cooking. So it's different. Here, I realized you can't do that. You can't just go to the mountain and cut the trees. I thought we don't have freedom to do that. I thought we didn't have freedom. Then finally I realized this is rule of law and property rights. We have a lot of freedom. We can say whatever we want to say. We can choose our own jobs, our own place to live, our own ways of living, and we can choose who we want to spend life with and get married or not get married. Those are the real freedom. So at the beginning, I didn't understand that, but now I do. And in China, still, we don't get to decide. For example, Chinese government told the people you only could have one child. Means they even monitor your bedroom activities. And now they said, and later on, not later on, just recently, they said you can have 2 children, but you have with permission. Just a few months ago, the government said, "Oh, you are not allowed to have 3 children." To me, it's not your business how many children I have or not have. Now you get penalty. Before you get penalty, you have more than 1 child, and now you get penalty if you don't want to have children. It's government still dictate people's life. Right. It's a horrible place, a horrible thing.
Right.
But unfortunately, this country, also many countries in the world are imitating China. Thought China was a good model. The government, the way of governing is a good model. They're embracing the Chinese style.
Right.
And the so-called cancel culture. It reminds me of the Cultural Revolution. And
Well, yeah. So let me ask you that question, which is, so now we have people who are saying that it's time to, go out there. Communism's a great idea, and if we just had the right people, it would be something that would be something to adhere to. Maybe it's this idealized view of it, but talk about how that really isn't a dream in your mind, but a nightmare.
it is definitely nightmare. Actually, today somebody was asking me a question, say, how did you survive? I said, well, I survived maybe because I'm a Christian, so God was protecting me. But a lot of my family members or friends, people I knew, one way they didn't survive is they were killed by the government actions and starved to death, or they committed suicide. In my family, expanded family, there were 11 people committed suicide because they couldn't take the pressure. Or the people who survived physically, they didn't survive mentally. So many of my relatives until today, they are still living in fears, including my parents. They live in fears. They live doubt. They don't believe this, they don't believe that, and it's just very tragic.
Well, and because of that, I think that a lot of people don't understand that under that kind of tyranny, and it is tyranny, that it's very much an authoritarian. They tell you what to do all the time about everything. And I think that what happens, people have this sense of, oh, this is going to be better because we're all in this together. However, your experience is just the opposite of that, right?
Exactly. And also, the reason a lot of people believed the government because they claim to provide equality to everybody. But the way they provide equality is taken from the people who produced, and redistribute. And in probably less than 5 years of time, everybody equally became dirt poor because nobody produced anymore. Everybody was just taking from the government. So it reminds me of today in this country, across the world, especially young people asking government, give us a free tuition, give us free medication, medical care, give us this, give us that. They don't understand. Government don't produce. Government only take from others and redistribute. When more they ask for the government, the more the government is going to punish people who produce and discourage people who produce. And it will bring equal poverty soon. It's not equal prosperity, because for me, equality is equal opportunity. But to the communists, a socialist, it's an equal redistribution. That's fundamentally wrong.
Right. And some people look at China because of all of the projects that have been built, the high-speed rail, the cities, the factories, and that kind of shows to the outside world how advanced China is getting. However, what you're saying is that really is false. It's not really true. It's more of a veneer that hides the dark secret of what China is all about.
They don't understand the beauty of the highways, and the project was built slowly, or the road have to get around some properties. That's the beauty, because there's a property right. China has no property rights, so the government want to build a road from A to B. They will just draw a line, and everybody in between A to B have to just get away. Even though you own a property, you have no right, nothing to say. And it's known the government will send a bulldozer, not only bulldoze the houses and put the people who protecting their house under the bulldozer and just kill them flat. And they have quotas. Allow the construction company to kill people who's getting in the way. So the beautiful highways, they're bloody. There are people's lives there.
Graveyards, then.
Graveyards and property rights, and doesn't exist in China because the government owns all the land and everything. People only have a living right. They don't have ownership. Yeah, living rights, and the living rights doesn't count of anything. So, for example, you have a living rights for this house, and then you went on vacation. You said to a person who didn't have a right, you can stay here for a month. When you come back, that person say, I'm not leaving. And you say, no, this is my home. They say, but too bad, I'm living here for the past month. You go to court. The court will say, oh, he lives there.
Right. You abandon it.
Yeah.
You're out. You lost.
Right. So that's you can't just look at the beautiful highway and this and that, the terraces and the scenery. You need to see how they get there, what's underneath of it, and what they build up on top of it. You know, those are people's lives, their liberty, their freedom.
So, in the last few moments that we have, talk about some of the reasons why you think that this mistake that people are getting seduced by. So, how do we stop that? How do we change people's minds? Because you've seen the worst of it, so we don't experience that here in the U.S. and the rest of the world.
That's a very good question and big question, because right now almost the whole world imitates China lockdown, mandate of mask. There's no proof those are the best way to deal with this pandemic, but because China did it, everybody just blindly imitates, and then empowered the government to say you have to stay home, you cannot leave, you cannot have more than five people for dinner. They're dictating every aspect of your lives, and most people will voluntarily embrace it. Say, okay, we'll do that. And they don't know, probably they will not expect this will last, and there's no limit what the government will say to your lives from now on and for a long time. Because they say, oh, this is a special time. No, this is not going to stop. Once the government had the right, say in your lives, they're not going to stop. And because they never experienced it, they don't know how horrible that is when you have total no control of your own lives.
Well, and let me see if I can summarize what I've heard from you, which is an incredible story, which is if you believe that you're giving up nothing by letting the government give you everything, what you're really giving up is a certain level of sanity, you're giving up freedom, and more importantly, you're letting someone else dictate your life. And by doing that, your family had a tragedy of multiple suicides, despondency, and of course, they really lost their life 1 minute at a time. That seduction is a dangerous thing that you have to repel. So that's what I heard you say, is that we all have to understand that this is a faustian bargain, if you know what that means. It's a deal with the devil, and it's a deal that none of us should make. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with you. You summarized right well. Yeah, we were living in the city. My mom is a university professor. My father is a medical doctor. And the government just sent our family to thousands of miles away, became peasants in the farm. And we had no say. We were there for 9 years. And then they said, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. You can come back. It's just like that.
Heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've been listening to Lee Schoolland, and she has a fascinating story. I'm really glad that we were able to connect here at Freedom Fest 2021. Thank you very much. This is John Paul Mendoza with This is Paul World, and all I can say is that this story should make each and every one of you thank whoever you want to thank, whatever you believe in, that you are in a free for now, free if we can keep it, as de Tocqueville said, society. Let's vote for liberty. Lee, would you agree with that? Vote
Yes.
for liberty?
Yes, vote for liberty with your own feet, with your own wallet, and vote for liberty, for freedom.
Lee, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, John Paul, for having me.